Hey everyone, hope you can hear me. I see my little thing lighting up. So, hey Miss Nikki. Oh, let me fix my. Got my shirt on. Yes. This thing always makes my head disappear. I assure you, I have a head. See, it's a very big one. Hey, welcome in everybody joining us this afternoon for our candidates roundtable. I'm going to share this out. Hey, Miss Trish. Miss Trish is the one who made this beautiful shirt. And it has our QR code on the back. You scan the QR code and it takes you to our link tree and to all the places you can find us on the internets. So as you're coming in, please say hello. Say hello on this Sunday afternoon, November 23rd. Repost the live. Share it out. I just shared it to a bunch of people. And I posted it to my story. And now I'm going to share it out to even more people. This is going to be a very interesting, wonderful time. We got some great candidates joining us. Progressive, grassroots. And I see we have Ericka. Hi, Ericka.
Hi, Miss Ayana. How are you today?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for asking.
And Hunter Miranda. Hi, Hunter.
Hello, how are you? Good to
I'm
see
well.
everyone.
Good to see you.
Good.
And Maura. Hello, Maura.
Hey there.
Hi. Oh, it's all the people I have spoken to on here. I love it. You came back for another round.
Couldn't get enough.
And I think we're waiting for one more person. I think we have one more person. We got some more people joining us. So if you all, while you're waiting for us to get started, if you could share out this live, let your followers know that you're on here talking about just some general issues. We'll get into some specific things, but it's going to be a good, we got 4 more people coming. It's going to be a good discussion amongst the candidates. I'm going to ask you all some questions just to get things started, to lead the discussion. Nothing you haven't heard before, so there won't be any surprises. Everything you can handle. But we have 4 more people that we're waiting for. So in the meantime, if you could just let people know what race you're running for. Ericka?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all. My name is Ericka Kopp, and I am running in Virginia's 1st District.
Awesome. Hunter?
Hello, everyone. My name is Hunter Garcia Miranda. I'm running in California's 47th Congressional District, which is down in Orange County.
And Maura?
Hi, everyone. My name is Maura Keller. I'm running for Congress in Georgia's 3rd Congressional District.
Awesome. And my name is Ayana. I am a moderator and one of the members of Our Vote Counts. I'm going to be with you this afternoon. And we're just going to do some light housekeeping right now. If you just came in, send us your daily heartney, which I think I forgot to do. Oh, no, I already did it. Great. I forgot just that quickly. But also share out the live, get the shares up. And if you're in the audience and you're on the panel and you're not talking, just hit that like. Just hit some likes on our live so we can get it on the FYP. And also, if you're in the audience and you want to gift the panel, you're free to do that. Also, if you would like to gift the account, help us out a little bit, you can also do that. If you want to ask questions, we're going to be asking questions in the chat, and I'll pose them to the members of the panel. But we're going to be covering topics such as immigration. We're going to be talking about the recent developments in Congress, We're going to talk about equality, education. We're going to talk about infrastructure and the environment, all the things, but some current events happening recently in the House of Representatives, some interesting developments. And I want to make sure everyone is up here before we start, so everybody can have a chance to chime in. But is everyone excited for Thanksgiving? Yay, food!
Finally.
You know, that's the one day of the year I get to just eat whatever I want and no one judges me at all. So it'll be pies and cakes and birds and some vegetables. There will be a vegetable.
Thrown in there.
Yeah, little side vegetable.
Do y'all have any special plans for Thanksgiving?
Nope. I don't have any special plans except for me and my kids. I guess that's special. Me and my kids.
Yeah, that's special.
I always do all the cooking every year, and people come to my house. You know, everybody just kind of rolls in whenever they want. By the time they get here, I've already eaten, and I'm sitting on the couch watching TV.
Perfect.
I love it.
So I've received word that I could just go ahead and get started. And welcome to everybody who is in the audience with us. Welcome to the candidates. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for our second OVC Round Table, featuring these great candidates, some of whom we have spoke with in the past in our town halls. If you go to our account, you can see the highlights from their individual town halls. Very exciting stuff. This afternoon, we're asking even tougher questions than we did before. There's no fluff, no rehearsed speeches. So if you have any thoughts or questions, drop them in the chat. You can react with emojis. We're here to hear what people have to say and hold them accountable for their statements. And this is OVC, Our Vote Counts, is a nonpartisan movement uniting Americans from all walks of life to empower voters, support candidates of integrity, and ensure every voice is heard through education, outreach, accountability, and action. We're building a stronger democracy, one informed vote at a time. Thank you for joining us. Remember, your vote is your power. And before you know it, it will be the primaries. And these folks will be putting their money where their mouth is and seeing if the people choose them to run in the finals. You know how in Glee, when they have to go to states, they're always practicing for states, but they have to get through the semis and all of that. So these folks have to get through the semis. And we know that primary races are notoriously not well attended. So we hope that these town halls and these candidates roundtables will get people more excited about voting in the primaries so that they can have challengers in these races that truly represent them and their voices, and that their voices have been heard fully. And so we're going to just go ahead and get started with an icebreaker question. What is one decision you regret, and how did you fix it? Ericka, I'll start with you.
Oh, that's a good question. Um, hmm. One decision that I could say that I regret is not getting involved in politics sooner. I think that if I would have educated myself in such a way that would have allowed me to be a stronger advocate for more people sooner, perhaps the situation that we're in my district now could have been mitigated in some way.
Okay, thank you. And Hunter?
Yeah, in that same type of vein, I wish I had realized that the establishment of the parties, weren't going to be the saving grace answer to our problems. I had started working in Democratic politics when I started in college, and trying my best to volunteer on campaigns, do whatever it was to get Democratic candidates elected, and trying to push specifically for policies that would really address the real cause of the issues that we're facing, specifically with corporations dominating our government, our economy. And then I quickly realized, unfortunately, a lot of those Democratic candidates are so beholden to that special interest money from those corporations that they're not willing to push for those changes. So I wish that was kind of something I realized a lot earlier, and realized that we have to be like we're doing today, challenging candidates and really pushing them on those issues specifically, rather than just saying, oh, it's a Democrat, it's great, so we're fine. And really realizing that we as a party have to really hold a mirror up to ourselves and change in that regard. So yeah.
I listened to what Ericka and what Hunter had said, and I agree with all of it. Back in, I think it was 2008, that I actually thought about running for office for the very first time, but I didn't think I had what it took. I didn't think, because I didn't take, I wasn't into politics. I wasn't a political science major, and I didn't have connections. I didn't think I could do it. And then, fast forward to now, and you have it. Every one of us has it. And again, I wish I had done it. I wish I had confidence in myself. I wish I knew more about the system, because it's really supposed to be about the people. It shouldn't be as difficult as it currently is.
You for that. I love that response. Comment in the chat if you agree with our panelists. There are people who are agreeing. I love that. Tired Lady said, that's right. We all have it. I see a W. I think the people are agreeing with you, and I do as well. And so we're going to kick the chat off with education, right? Education and equity. It's been in the news a lot. There have been changes to the structure, at least at the federal level, and that's the office that you all are running for. Education is the foundation of justice, and we're going to talk about why schools in some districts still receive more funding than schools in poorer ones, and what you can do to ameliorate that. Would you support cutting tax breaks for corporations to fund public schools? Hunter, I'll start with you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think back to the point we all kind of touched on earlier, is that we have a economic and governmental system that have been completely rigged, right, over the last 50, 60 years to suck wealth and power from working class communities and concentrate it in the hands of a select few. And that system has resulted in, like you touched on, communities that are completely left, to fend for themselves when it comes to educating their children, which, like you mentioned, is literally the most important thing that we can do as a civilization, is make sure that our children have prosperous places to learn and be educated and thrive in. And that should be, priority number one, where instead you have a system that has been rigged, like I said, to allow these massive multinational corporations, billionaires, millionaires, to suck off the system and enjoy all of the bounty that we as working class Americans have produced, which has led to children, like I just touched on, children being left out and not being able to benefit from those systems as equally across the board. So yes, we have to be cutting tax breaks for those corporations, allow that funding to go directly into public schools. I think one thing we also have to address is vouchers for private schools. We as taxpayers shouldn't be allowing wealthy Americans to send their children to private schools off of taxpayer money, when that money could be going directly to our public schools. So that's another point that we need to focus on. But yes, 100% agree.
Maura?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Hunter had said. Right now with our schools, we know, with them trying to get rid of the Department of Education, we see what's going to happen to our children with any type of disability, and how those that are on the school vouchers, that they don't have to accept these type of children. So we've already put them at a disadvantage, number one. Number two, to me, we should not be doing the school voucher until we have our public schools funded to the level that they should be, that the teachers are given everything. Because every time you take away, you give a school voucher to go to a public school, that's less money going into, the public. usually parents that can afford the public school, if if I'm sorry, the private school, if that private school needs something, usually the parents have the resources to be able to make sure they have that. But the parents that are working, just getting by, they don't have that extra money to give to the public schools. And now in my rural areas, we don't have like a lot of public schools, but we have now the religious private schools. And so, that's where the money's going to be going. And my biggest concern is with those three levels, from private schools to public schools and then the private religious schools. I'm afraid with them allowing for the states to allow them to teach what they want. Upon graduation, we're going to be graduating different type of people. And I'm afraid we're not going to be able to have conversations because whatever they went through for 12 years is their truth. And that, to me, that is a big fear of mine. But like what Hunter said before, we need to make sure that our public schools have exactly what they need. Corporations, absolutely not.
And Erica, one of the issues I'm faced with in the state of Ohio is the rising property tax levies against me as a property owner because of the tax breaks given to corporations. And the state has to make up for it somewhere. And so they hit up the local communities, hit up the property owners time after time. And so that really does squeeze people out of home ownership. It makes living in certain areas only desirable to those who can afford to pay property taxes, not the mortgage, but the additional cost of owning a home in an area in a state where it has to rely primarily on property taxes to fund public schools. Do you have an idea of how additional ways that states or the federal government can come up with to fund public schools versus constantly going to the taxpayer and saying, hey, I'm going to need a little bit more money out of your paycheck for this?
Yeah, in addition to cutting back tax breaks on billionaires, which I want to be clear that I absolutely agree with because our public schools need to be funded. We need to have a strong civics education. One thing that I can speak to is that here in Virginia, what we do is we actually use the public lottery to fund public schools. Now, I think that there can be issues with that too. And I think that that should not be a substitute for federal funding to go to public schools. But as far as an additional way that would not necessarily put the burden on property owners, I know that that's something that we do here in the Commonwealth.
And so once those changes are made, right, we see other changes that are being made currently at the federal level with the Department of Education. They're moving this to the Department of Labor. They're moving this to the Department of Health and Human Services. And so we look at the statistics in the United States of how many people graduate high school and then go on to college, and it's really not on par with other nations. You see that, and if you're in Congress and you've just kind of gone along with what the president is doing with the Department of Education, and you've gone along with the chronic underfunding of public education, do you, as a member of the House of Representatives, would you take responsibility for the gaps that are going to be created by that, the gaps in the success between American students and students of other countries, or people choosing not to go on to higher education? Would you feel some responsibility for that? I'll start with you, Maura.
Yeah, I would. My God, I don't even know where to begin on this one. We because it's got so many different tentacles,
Yeah.
and it's not a one size fits all. What's important in Georgia might not be the exact same that's happening in California or Virginia, but we've got to make sure that they all have the resources that they need. Right when we look at the cost of education, we're putting it out of reach for so many people. I mean, once they graduate, they're going to be in debt for so long. And, whether it be their families paying or them paying, um, we've got to make it more affordable. And I like in my district working with some of the technical colleges trying to create those. We know the jobs that are happening, or what jobs that I would want to bring to the district. The schools are actually making sure that they're training and working with these possible businesses. So we've got a pathway for people that don't want to do the 4 year, that they can do these trade and technical schools. So, I mean, again, like I said, it's got so many different levels to it. But I would feel like really, really bad if we don't make education the foundation and such a priority. Because right now, I don't think it's a priority of this administration.
All right, thank you for that answer. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Hunter for Alabama. We got two Hunters up here. Oh boy, Hunter, are you there?
I am here.
Okay, could you introduce yourself for the panel and the audience?
Yes, my name is Robert Lewis Hunter. I am running for House District 28 in the state of Alabama, in arguably the second or third, I would actually say somewhere between second or third most competitive seat not held by a Democrat in the state.
Wow, and you're in Alabama, one of the states that's, I don't want to say mocked, but it is kind of mocked for its placement in education. What do you think the federal government can do to lift Alabama out of this hole that it's in?
I would say stricter educational standards when it comes to where federal funds goes, due to the fact that Alabama sometimes cannot be currently trusted to actually dole out the money in an effective way. Alabama has a long history of reaching into the educational pot and then giving that money to other things, including building prisons, even though the cost of building prisons, like per prisoner, yields little to no profit. Comparative to every single dollar you put into education, you get $3 back, based on those educated individuals being able to get jobs that are tax increases or tax returns, which increases your budget for the local budgeting efficiency of your state legislature.
And Hunter, how do you see Congress's role in making sure the money gets from Congress to the actual programs and the people it's intended for? We've had in Alabama and Mississippi and other states where the money just kind of sits there, and an athlete maybe comes in and says, hey, I want to build a volleyball stadium for my daughter's college. Can you get me $20 million? How do you ensure things like that don't happen? What controls do you see Congress needing to put on these programs, these grants, these block grants that it gives to the states?
Yeah, I think there has to be. Or which Hunter are you talking to?
Oh, I'm sorry, Hunter Miranda. I
Gotcha, no worries. And nice to meet you, other Hunter. All good. Yes, those programs have to be done with intense oversight, in my opinion. Like you were touching earlier, the fact that the federal government has essentially dismantled the Department of Education, if we're being real, right? They have no intention of requiring it, because the whole point and purpose of it is to ensure that every student across the nation, regardless of which state you live and whichever state legislature you're under, has access to the essentials of education provided, right? This was put in place because you had racist state legislatures segregating schools. You had indigenous children being beaten and, malnourished in schools. These were things that were happening in states across the country. And the whole reason that we had the Department of Education was to prevent those types of things from happening and ensure that there was every single student, regardless of where you lived, had access to those key essentials so that they could get educated properly, right? And the fact that the administration now is just completely stripping that away is horrifying. So like you said earlier, we have to, as Congress, reinforce all of those things that reestablish the Department of Education, ensure that it's stronger than ever before. And then two, have an intense oversight when those programs do occur, so that states can't just take that money that's given to them by the federal government and do whatever they want with it. So that we're making sure that that actually goes directly to the students to benefit them. And then it's a vicious cycle, really, when it comes down to people saying like, oh, well, the investments in education might not be worth it. That's completely backwards for the thinking but what's gotten America in the places where we've been so prosperous is when we have solid education systems that empower our children, that allow them to go into the workforce and benefit our entire country and our economy, which then simultaneously you allow them to give back to the government and give back to our communities. And it's just, a beneficial cycle for the whole country. So, yeah.
And you know what? Some people might say, hey, it's been over 40 years we've had this Department of Education. Maybe we just don't need it anymore. What do you think, Ericka? Do we still need a Department of Education? Or can we
I
have these other places just kind of be like, hey, here's the money, here's the money, here's the money?
I absolutely do think that we need the Department of
Yeah.
Education. And I think that if we didn't, that Congress wouldn't have established it. So at the end of the day, it is the responsibility of Congress to ensure that the Department of Education stays what it was created to do and actually do the job that it was meant for. There needs to be additional oversight, to Hunter's point, that Congress is ensuring that the Department of Education is doing its job. And if that accountability isn't there now, it needs to be.
You're right, because even if the accountability isn't there now, and that's why you're getting rid of the agency, well, does it exist in these other agencies that you're handing these programs off to? Maybe you're just shifting the work from one thing to the next, and they're all just kind of floundering, and nobody's going to get any work done. It doesn't matter where you put the 504 and the IEP programs. It doesn't matter where you put the I don't know, the civil rights uh, wing of the Department of Education. If the agency overseeing it doesn't have that accountability factor, then it's going to fail anyway. And so, Hunter, for Alabama, do you trust the federal government to do its job in this case?
What I will say is I trust the federal government currently more than I do Alabama state legislature members, in part because there is more actual forward-looking individuals and policies and nonprofits that would want to move this in a certain form and fashion that I do not trust with current state legislature members, as the entirety of the Alabama state legislature system is gerrymandered ridiculously.
Well, and let's move on to gerrymandering. More.
Welcome to Georgia.
Oh boy. It's a mess. It is a mess. Anyone have any ideas on how we can fix this at the I'm in Ohio, and I don't even want to talk about it. It makes my stomach hurt. But anyone have any ideas on how we can I guess bolster equality and fairness in voting and making sure every voice is heard, like is our motto, but also lines. What are these lines? Why do these lines matter? And I know it matters for your races, your District 1 and your District 12 and your District 21. But if you're running in an area that's, everyone's been zoned to be mostly Republican voters, then it's not going to matter if you're a Democrat because you're not going to win anyway. What can the states do or Congress do to ameliorate this? Go ahead, Maura, since you're.
Yeah, so like my area was gerrymandered. And what they did was they, gave me 2 extra red counties because I have 15 total now. And then they took away my blue. So, but on a positive note, we moved the needle 3 more points Democratic, even though that's what they did to us. So yeah, that is a positive sign. That to me is a tell. But they have agencies out there that can do it nonpartisan, and I don't understand why we are not using them. Because right now, what we see is this administration actually calling for actual gerrymandering to be in their best interest. And they're not hiding it. That's the whole point. It's just like, I don't get that. But it's of no value to the people. Because like let me tell you, last year when I was knocking on the doors in the rural areas. And when I would ask them, about coming out to vote, so many people told me they don't vote. And it's like, why don't you vote? And they felt what you all say, my vote doesn't count, my voice isn't heard. And the reason is because the news tells them that only a Republican can win. So why come out and vote? But then when I try to explain, when we look at the local races, had you all come out to vote, that person would be a commissioner. That person would be your mayor. Work its way up. You have to be able to show that. But that's what I had to fight last year. And I'm still going to be doing that same fight that don't buy into that narrative that the news and the media is selling you, because your vote does count, your voice is heard, and you can make a difference. It all starts with one, but that one compounds, and I just need to give them that hope. So, yeah, that's where we're at here.
And thank you, Maura. And Ericka, you're an attorney. You probably pay close attention to what's going on with the SCOTUS. What do you think is going to be the decision in the Louisiana case and this recent Texas gerrymandering case?
First and foremost, I want to remain hopeful. That said, I'm not blind, and I've seen what SCOTUS has done throughout not just this term, but in years past as it relates to the Voting Rights Act. My hope is that they see that the arguments coming from Louisiana and the arguments coming from Texas as it relates to gerrymandering, that they do have significant harmful effects as it relates to the people of color in those districts. I mean, we saw that the maps from Texas that the Texas legislature passed, they had the effect of diluting the voices of Black and Brown voters. And quite frankly, it's wrong. And it's coming from a Supreme Court that has inscribed on its building equality and justice for all. And how do we get equality and justice under law for all, if not by having each person's vote and voice count?
And this is something that you all can answer, because this is, a question anybody can answer. But President Trump is the one who kind of kicked off this, but gerrymandering has been something it's been around for decades, but I don't think we've ever seen a president go to a state and say, hey, can you get me 5 more seats? And for some people, that might seem like he's broken the law. Now, to what extent do you think the president should be held to the law, considering the power that the Supreme Court has given him to be exculpated from any kind of wrongdoing while he's exercising his presidential power? Are investigations like in the past, the Mueller probe and Jack Smith's case, are these a waste of time or a worthwhile use of federal resources? Anybody can chime in.
I guess I'll touch on that. Yeah, I think the rule of law has to be upheld in every instance. There are certain things, that we have to be very particular when an investigation begins and, what we're specifically looking at. But I think there are multiple instances where this president specifically has done things that would rise to the level of impeachable offense. You touched on the Supreme Court case where they basically said that while in official capacity, the president themselves cannot be held criminally responsible for key acts or for those acts that are carried out while in office. So that means that it all falls on the impeachment process, right? The only way that we as Americans can keep and make sure that someone as powerful as the president of the United States, the leader of the free world, the commander in chief of the most powerful military in history, to keep that level and that rule of law, we have to enforce that impeachment power. And that's something that as representatives in the House, we will have a direct say in enforcing. I'm actually super proud to be part of the Courage Candidates Coalition, which is a group of candidates that are coming forward and saying that once we step into office, we will begin that impeachment process because, for instance, there are things like the extrajudicial killings of people coming from Venezuela, which has to be investigated. The fact that the president is unilaterally killing people that are coming to the country, whether there could be drugs on those boats, there could not. The fact that he is executing people requires an impeachment inquiry. The fact of criminal cover-up with the Jeffrey Epstein files has to be investigated. The fact that he was working directly with the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, and Kash Patel, they had conversations where they essentially were discussing covering up information in those files. That has to be investigated. There are multiple instances where it has to be pushed by the House to conduct those investigations so that we can ensure that the rule of law is upheld. So yes, I'm very much on board with all of that.
And Hunter, I'm going to get you because you have forgotten all of the TikTok rules and you just come in here using all of the naughty words.
Sorry, yes. My apologies.
And I didn't say anything. I'm like, I'm just going to let him talk.
I will keep that in mind. I went on a rant there.
That's okay, but everything you said is absolutely true. If anyone else wants to chime in, you can.
I would love to expound upon that too. So to add to what Hunter said, I've taken a look at the Supreme Court case that grants immunity to the president for official acts. Now, I think that there's an argument to be made about whether these extrajudicial unalivings are an official act, because these are actions that are against international law. These are actions that would be against federal law if this person wasn't the president of the United States. I think that it needs to be revisited as to whether or not this is an official act such that immunity would apply. And I think that in order to get to that decision, to get to that determination, we would need an investigation by a special counsel, by somebody that is an independent investigator to look at all of these different things and say either, yes, this was an official act under the framework set out by the Supreme Court, or no, because these things are not allowed to happen by either the president or anyone else. They are not an official act. I think we need that. I think absolutely we need impeachment. And then I also believe that we need a criminal prosecution.
All right. Anyone else? Alabama Hunter, what say you?
I honestly believe the same. I think one of the issues that pops up is the inability for people to think, I would say, inside of the box when it comes to this type of situation, because honestly, some of the only real restrictions that have been shown to work is if it becomes a, sadly, all-around political issue. A great example being that one of the very few places where you can't open carry was California, and they put it in place when they were Republicans in charge of the state due to Black Panthers using their political ability to use their Second Amendment rights to protest. I think that in certain situations we need to test what the guardrails are specifically and how it affects all Americans. Sadly, because unless it affects all Americans in some form or fashion, there will be individuals that will politicize it. And once it becomes a politicized issue, you drop from 80% support down to 44 to 46, depending on the importance of the situation.
And speaking of guardrails, right? The actual party is supposed to be the guardrail to prevent rogue candidates from getting to the primary, from getting to the general election, from getting into the seat. Because not all of you are necessarily running as Democrats, but you're running for the Democrat races. Are you satisfied with the guardrails that these parties have in place to prevent another Marjorie Taylor Greene, because you all are running, but you're running, some of you are socialist Democrats, some of you are progressives, some of you are, people might look at you and go, well, they're far left. We don't want far left candidates. How do you think the party needs to step in and sort of prevent it, or just let people who want to run, let ideas flow, let people do whatever they want? Maura, go ahead.
Wow. I really think you have to let people be who they are, so you know who they are. Um, I've seen instances where parties have tried to put their finger on the scale a little bit in guide people to certain people, and that might be that might be the way it should be. No, let me say that again. Maybe that person really would be the best candidate, but it's up to us, the American people, to say who it is that we want that is going to represent us. We, on a different note, we just need the party to come out and support us. That's one thing that it's like they like easy, they like low hanging fruit. And if you're not in that kind of category, you're kind of out there. So we as candidates need support from the party in order for anybody to be able to run.
And so when you all are out there doing your phone banking and your fundraising, do you see pushback from the Democrat Party, the
Yes.
DNC?
Well, DNC, they say, they already have on their vision board the races that they're going to support. The same thing with the DCCC. And right now, Georgia isn't on the list. So unless you can do something that is going to get their eye, you need to figure out how to make that happen. Other than that, you're doing this race by yourself.
And it's an important race. Like the midterms are very important.
Yes, it is.
And I really do. I hate that the larger party is not coming in, swooping in with, like, I know that they just borrowed a bunch of money to support campaigns. They're not swooping in to give that money to you all. They're not. And it's a shame. It's not a shame that you have to rely on the public's help. That's wonderful. I think it's good that the people can come in and support the races that they care about, and races, in places where they don't even live. I see a lot of people going, hey, I'm not in Florida, but I'm in Nebraska and I love you and I'm going to send you $50. I think that's great, but support from the party overall is also necessary. But you can win without it. We just saw that in New York City. You can win without the backing of the larger party. And a lot of people are moving away from the larger party and they're moving towards more grassroots candidates. How do you feel that your campaign is going so far? I know that primaries are starting in some places. Early voting starts in February. How do you feel that your race is going so far for you?
For me,
anybody can chime in.
It's hard, when you're making your phone calls to raise money. I mean, you get your meet and greets and you can make some dollars, but trying to make those phone calls, I've had a lot of people tell me they're unhappy with our party, that we are a do nothing party, and they want fighters, and it's like, yeah, I am a fighter. You gotta know who I am. But the sad thing is, where your money goes is, purchasing donor lists. Those aren't cheap.
Okay.
Those are not. I would rather know that all the money that I am raising is going to my race, not to pay for a donor list. Which, if I don't make enough to pay for that donor list, I have to take money out of our campaign in order to pay for that donor list, which means I have made absolutely no money.
Wow.
And
Hunter, Miranda, you're shaking your head, and Ericka, you're shaking your head too. Is this what you've experienced?
Could not agree more. Yeah, the entire system is like Maura just said, is rigged so that only wealthy, well-connected people can run for office. It's a completely broken system, and unfortunately, the same types of organizations and things that do very, very good work, but they're caught up in that same system where if you're a candidate and you haven't raised $100,000 on your own, for example, they're not even going to listen to what you have to say. No one really cares about policy or what policies you'll be pushing for. They just care about how much money you can initially raise on your own and then bring to that, which inherently is just such a massive barrier to entry to our whole political system. And to kind of what the whole point earlier is that the whole Democratic Party has been taken over by corporatist Democrats, especially at the federal level, who have created a system of our Democratic Party that is only allows those that are beholden to big money, big corporate interests to basically win these big races. And when you have people like Azor Mamdani that stood up to the party and said, hey, enough is enough. We as people can take power back for ourselves. You had an overwhelming support of people coming out and pushing for that idea because people are so fed up with both parties just being bought out and sold. And I think back to our kind of earlier point that was mentioned is that was kind of the whole reason why Trump was so popular when he won and has continued to win, is that people are so sick and tired of both parties. Unfortunately, Trump was a terrible choice ultimately, but it was something different that people saw as a shakeup and a stir to the whole system. And as Democrats, if we don't realize that and change the entire structure of our party, we're screwed, and we're not going to be able to, benefit or, actually win elections and create this change that we're all talking about.
And Alabama, Hunter, are you having the same issues in your state race? Are you having to pay for donor lists and not receiving the support that you believe you need?
Yes, on multiple fronts. Although it's just rough all around. My Democratic Party, both at the county level and at the state level, are probably the second or first most dysfunctional party in the entire United States of America. It feels like we've actually been chastised and sent in front of the DNC for illegal actions by the standard of our bylaws, I think 5 times in the last 6 years. And this coming from someone who has been a state Democratic Party member for the last 7. So we've consistently always just done illegal things that have nothing to do with actually winning elections. A great example being I get fundraising texts and fundraising emails from my state Democratic Party, and they're saying, we need your $5 to help organize. We need your $5 to strategize with our candidates. I'm like, I was on a list of over 200 individuals that said after 2024 they want to run for office. They have not reached out to me. The beginning, the cutoff for my qualifying is January 25th. So minus Christmas, they have 5 weeks to reach out to all 200, which I guarantee you they will not do because they work at the behest and at the pleasure of our state party leader or chairman that does not care about winning elections. They care about keeping their job because they're just so bad at it that there's constantly individuals, myself included, that want him gone. So it would be helpful if my state party was active to the point where, hey, we have a race. Last time a Democrat ran in this race, it was only an R+4, which is the 4th best performance a Democrat has put on in the entire state, and a R+3 flipped last go round. So this is one of our targets. Let's go check on fundraising. Let's go check on how many people are giving money in the area that might be willing to be volunteers. Let's go check on social media. None of that. Even at the county party level, my county party is dysfunctional due to the fact that the person that is our county chair also is not currently really doing their job. They've only had 7 meetings in the last 3 years. They average about 1 meeting every 6 to 9 months, which demoralize people to even come to the meetings, to the point where we can't even hold official work because we need 40% of the people to show up. And I'm also now having to organize an action to remove that person, because even from the lack of effectiveness, it goes into the fact that when we say Democrats do nothing, we got to replace Democrats who don't do anything. So I'm kind of having to build the plane and build the tarmac and figure out how to fly this thing, because this is only my 2nd election that I've run in by myself.
And that is a lot of work for one person. And so I understand why somebody said we don't like TikTok politicians. Well, this is where the people are. You have to go to where the people are. You know, it's not anymore that you can put an advertisement in the newspaper and people are like, "Hey, I'll help volunteer with you and I'll work with you." And Maura, you had something else to add to this,
Well,
or
what you just said was, I can't speak for the other candidates, but in Georgia, we don't get any press. They don't cover us. I could put press releases out well, we did in my last election every week, and they weren't picked up because so many of the newspapers are Republican owned. And so it's hard, and like they're supposed to give us equal time. So if my opponent was on the radio, they're supposed to give me equal time. It just doesn't have to be in a timely manner. So it's we have to find ways to get our voices out, and TikTok helps, but we still have to find other ways outside of the box thinking to get our message out.
And speaking of Republicans, and I'm glad you all are here, by the way, as another way to help get your voices out. We really appreciate you being here, and we're glad that we could do this for you. People in the audience can continue to tap the screen and participate. I love the comments that I'm seeing. I see some of the candidates are replying to the comments, and I love it. Speaking of Republicans, one of my favorite things to do is to troll Vivek Ramaswamy on Threads. He loves to post on social media about all the things he's doing around the state of Ohio. I'm in Ohio, and he's running for governor, running for the primary for the Ohio governor seat next year. And he's going out to this county and this county. He's holding these big donor lunches and dinners and things. And the other day, he posted a photo of himself standing on a pile of coal, right? And he's saying, it's okay to depend on fossil fuels. We need to continue our extraction of the earth and et cetera, to produce energy. And the one reason that Americans, their energy bills are so high is because we don't supply enough. So we need to do more drilling, obviously, and we need to continue to rely on coal. And one of the things that he fails to talk about is the reason why American energy prices are going up, and it's because of these data centers that are springing up all over the country. We don't know why, we don't know what it's for, but they seem to be either overwhelmingly supported or hated, and people are able to keep them out. We had one candidate who said, well, they have influence and power, so they're going to get in anyway, even if you're against it. Do you believe, and I know Hunter for Alabama, there are data centers coming to Alabama. Do you believe that data centers are the best use of local land, or should it be reserved for projects that create more jobs? Now, keep in mind that American energy bills are high because we don't supply enough energy. So, according to the Republicans, so what do you think? Anybody can answer.
I'll start. I know that Virginia is one of the states that has many data centers. There was recently a proposal to put one effectively in my backyard, in the next county over, from which I'm maybe 3 miles away. And it's crazy because there was a statistic that came out recently on NPR that data centers use more power and energy than some cities. And so, with that being said, if we're having all of our resources going to data centers and not going to the communities that they should be serving, that's not a good use of our energy, number one. Number two, we're not having an effective way of getting job growth in these areas where data centers are going up. Number three, potentially these data centers are in locations where we could build affordable housing instead to help combat the cost of housing and affordability to homes. But all of this, they're not being used in an effective manner, from the space that they're on to the energy resources that they take up.
So, like in the rural areas, I've got one in my county that I live in. Then there's three others that are being built. Now, they when they talk to the communities, they they make them believe that they're going to be helping pay the property taxes for the people and that they're going to be bringing in all these jobs and they're approving it. And it's like, when it's all said and done, you may have construction, but then again, at the very end, all you have is like maybe some security folks. You do have some data people, but then they travel around to the other counties. And so they're not bringing in the jobs. We, many of them should be in those heavy industrial areas, but because the rural farmlands are cheap, that's where they're going. And in, like Ericka was saying, we have them where they're butting up to people's houses, and they've built these power poles on people's land and claiming eminent domain. So you've got that whole issue. You've got the issue of the water supply, that because I've been going around to all my counties. I attend all the meetings because now people are really upset with these data centers. But you know, the water, 60 to 80% of the water dissipates because it's cooling down. So we're going to be having a water shortage, and that's going to affect my farmers, you know, that are going to need it. And they're making deals with other counties, and they, and in the you know, the peoples of those counties may not know that a deal is being made that some of your water is going to be diverted to another county to you know, for that. So they are no good. And again, it just came out that Howard Lutnick, or now he had to divest, and he divested to his son. They have a huge input into these data centers. They are making big bucks from these data centers. Again, it's the money that this cabinet and administration is making.
So, and I'll pose this question to the two hunters. What do you think at the federal level Congress can do, or at the state level with the state house or the governor can do to safeguard communities from these environmental changes, these big changes that are coming? Since the job creation is not as big as some would have hoped, and the environmental impact is probably going to be greater than the number of jobs created, obviously, and it'll go on for hundreds of years. What do you think the federal government can do to safeguard communities from these things?
Yeah, I think going back to the point that was just made is that this is just one aspect of AI, kind of the AI revolution that we're seeing in the increase of all these data centers. And the fact that Congress has failed to regulate that properly and create the proper frameworks so that this new technology can be, you know, brought out in a safe way that doesn't impact communities to the level that it is now. And it goes to show that we, as Congress, when we get into office, we have to be focused on creating a framework of regulation that not just regulates AI and how it works and how, you know, it operates and all the different aspects of that, which we could talk for hours about, but also like these data centers directly impacting communities, like was talked about earlier, taking up water, energy costs, really impactful environmental concerns that are deeply impacting a lot of people that, you know, we won't really see the full effects of for years to come. And that's just another example of poor communities being completely screwed over when it comes to economic regulations and environmental protections. So as Congress, we have to step up and ensure that those protections are put in, not just necessarily leaving it up to the states, because like we've seen a lot of the times, those states, whether it be some, you know, a governor or a legislature being beholden to those big special interests, a lot of the times they fall short in providing those protections. So it has to come from the federal level and a standardized approach that every, you know, no matter what state or area that you're living in, that those protections are put in place. And then, like I mentioned earlier, coupled with a uniform approach on how we deal with AI in general, to address all of these issues that come with that.
Alabama Hunter, I read some stories yesterday about some new data centers coming to, I believe, and I know you know Jazz B, to Bessemer, Alabama. How do you think your state is handling all of this new infrastructure and changes coming to the environment? Do you think this is a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it's a bad thing, just because at the end of the day, if you're trying to sell me on this will make my community better, I need in written documentation that is legally binding that you're going to produce at least 20 to 30 jobs that are paying over $20 an hour to my community members. And if if you make the excuse you cannot find the people capable of doing that work, you're coming into my community and asking resources of us, invest in us, in making sure that we can partner with a local community college or a regular college to actually educate our citizens to bring this here. You're coming to us because Alabama has the cheapest land tax wise in the entire state, in the entire South, if not most of the country. Um, but I don't see any of that. They give you whispers of a promise of 100 jobs and they only produce three. I don't think it's worth the money or the time or hassle to even attempt to bring that here. Number one, but number two, Alabama currently does not have a set of laws when it comes to like environmental protections. It's one of the things that one of the first bills I'll be working on introducing when I become a state representative is a bill specifically just saying Alabama residents have a right to clean air, clean water, and clean land. That way, it starts the legal framework of potentially suing landlords if they have mold in their businesses and in their residential areas, because currently we don't have that framework at the local level that is helpful. I think in general, if you're coming and asking for resources from us, you have to actually put in work and bring resources yourself. I'm not against businesses coming into my district, but not businesses that are clearly exploitative.
And if you're in the chat, can you please let me know if you think the environment should be handled locally or federally? Just put in the chat if you think it should be local or federal, or maybe you think it should be both. But like Alabama Hunter said, they have nothing in place. And Hunter Miranda says, hey, we need more regulation. And I agree. It should be both. It should absolutely be both, especially if you have any kind of industrial sector. It should be both. But it should also, it's not bad to bring jobs to your region, but it has to be environmentally sound. And I think that Congress is in a position to make sure it's environmentally sound. But we know that we're dealing with a president and an administration that doesn't believe in climate change, that thinks, we should heavily rely on fossil fuels, that carbon emissions should be rolled back because all of that is fake news, it's fake science, it's DEI, it's et cetera, et cetera. Don't believe the hype. And it's just a lot of ridiculousness. And so switching gears a little bit, we're going to talk about I want to talk about healthcare and economic justice. Now, we just dealt with this. So this should be fresh in everyone's mind. And I sighed heavy because, my goodness, the last 2 months since September have been well, I guess it's been almost 3 months. Because the fight started somewhat in September and it's almost the end of November, and healthcare, the fight is still fresh in people's minds. And what are we doing? What are we doing? On the one hand, we have a bunch of Republican voters who are going to be affected by the end of these premium subsidies for the ACA, and their party is not really doing anything about it. And on the other hand, we have another party that's going, just give them one more year, that'll be enough. And it's not seeming enough. And then we have this big, beautiful bill that's going to cut back Medicaid and then cut trillions out of Medicare. And now people are going to have to go to work if they want to get this benefit and this benefit. What are we doing? What is happening? Anyone have any idea? Where do we go?
Well, to start, what's happening is that the current politicians we have in office are being bought out by those massive insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies. So that's exactly why we're in the reason we are now. We have the resources, we have the ability to create a system. I think and I know that a universal single payer system is the most efficient and effective system. We have the resources and ability to do that. We just don't have the political willpower to actually make that a reality. So that's unfortunately what's happening, in my opinion.
If you have any thoughts, go ahead.
I would agree with what Hunter just said too. I think that we have a statutory framework that we could work within to make a universal healthcare system a reality. And it's just about the will of the representatives elected to do the work, doing the work. And I think that if, the folks on this panel are with me in Congress next year, I think we could get it done.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. We've when you were talking about the insurance companies, I mean, when I look at my guys, how much money he has been getting, when you see CEO for this healthcare company giving him max donors, and then the actual pack, so it's healthcare companies, insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies. When you watch Bernie, when he's talking to these CEOs for the pharmaceutical companies, and he's saying, you're making profits in all these countries that are on universal health care. And can you guarantee us the same amount that you're paying them, or what they're paying you? And each and every one of those CEOs says, we cannot commit to that at this time. Why is it the American people get to pay everybody? It just makes absolutely no sense. And talking to, coming from healthcare, talking to some of these doctors, they're like, man, we could get so much done. We could see more patients. We could help more people because we would have less paperwork that we would have to do. We wouldn't have to be getting all these approvals to be able to help people. And, it's all that mis and disinformation that is put out there that you will never see your doctor. It'll take you 6 months and you'll be dead by then. But those little bits, that's what people are grabbing and saying, that's why we don't want it. If we have a group here and we can multiply us in Congress, we can actually make a difference, because how can all these countries be healthy and us being, we have all the money in the world, and we are the sickest.
Let me ask you about the money part of that, because I work for the Fed. I don't like to advertise it, but I have good health insurance, and if I move to universal health care or Medicare for all, am I still going to have that same good health insurance? I mean, I'm a person who works. Shouldn't I have, I should have a better level of care than people who don't work. Why should people who don't work have the same level of care as me? I mean, I'm not that type of person, but that's the attitude. We shouldn't all have the same level of care, because if I work, I should be getting better health care. And you don't work, you should get just like a, minimal little, you get a dental cleaning, you get a physical, and that's it. What do you think about that? Everyone receiving the same care, the same level of care. Maybe there should be a 2-tier system, 3-tier, but then we create inequities when we do that. So what's the solution? Anyone?
Well, when you look at the universal health care, it's going to be through taxes that we all are going to end up paying. I did have one doctor a couple of weeks ago, and he basically said the same thing. He said, and it just kind of shocked me when he said, healthcare is a privilege. It's not a right. And I had to cock my head sideways. I was like, dude, say that again. I just couldn't believe he actually believed that. Again, maybe if we improve the wages a little bit, that person making $7.25 just might be able to afford health care. So we create some of these inequities. Not that people don't want to work, but if they have children, and man, I only can make $10 an hour, but childcare is going to cost me $1,200 a month. I have to pick and choose what I can actually do, or what makes which is financially right for my family. So,
And to that point, and realizing too that the insurance companies, this is a trillions of dollar industry, right? That all of that money and things that are going to those private insurance companies, people are paying, especially now with, ACA subsidies going out and how completely screwed up, premiums are now skyrocketing. You have people paying $1,200, $1,800, even sometimes 2 to 3 times that in some instances for healthcare a month, which is unsustainable and can't continue on. And with a single payer system, it's been proven that in certain economic systems, that some of them do best in a monopolistic system. Insurance is one of those things. When you have a single payer, meaning and essentially a monopoly that takes over that whole industry, it is the most efficient and effective way. Obviously, when the government is doing it and orchestrating it, it has to be done very meticulously, because obviously there's always the argument that people make is that, oh, well, if the government's the one doing it, then it's going to be terrible and mismanaged and misrun. So that we as representatives and people as part of our government have to make sure that it is implemented in a way that is efficient and effective, but it can completely be done that way while simultaneously lowering costs for working families and every American, basically, to allow that to happen if we do transition to a single payer system.
So it's next year, you're running in the primary, someone comes to you and said, hey, I'm in your district and I don't have health insurance, and I have a seizure disorder, I have asthma, I have this, I have that. What are you going to do for me on day one so that I have something that I can take to a doctor and say, hey, I can't pay as much, or this is my coverage. What are you going to do? First day in Congress, first day at the State House for Alabama, Hunter. What are you going to do? Ericka?
Yeah,
First,
I think. Oh, go ahead, Hunter.
I was just going to say, first day, first thing I am doing is I am backing either someone else to bring a Medicare expansion bill to the floor. Probably not even first day, because we can pre-file before we get there. If someone has already put it up, I'm going to support it however I can. If someone hasn't, I'm going to pre-file a bill to expand Medicaid expansion in my state. That's the first thing. The second thing is, of course, it will include a allocation, because essentially we pay 22 million in, and we get back from the federal government 220 million almost. So it will have to include actual functioning way to pay for that, but also that same time period, I will be trying to build coalitions in my internal Democratic Party where I'm going to try to get it passed at the state level that you cannot qualify as a Democrat in the state of Alabama if you take medical insurance campaign funds.
Oh, wow. Okay. Ericka?
Yeah, to Hunter's point, if there's not already legislation that is drafted and ready to go for me to endorse on day one to have a universal healthcare system, I'm going to create my own. And here's how it's going to look. I'm going to write a piece of legislation that removes the income requirements from Medicaid so that that will remove those limitations for people, allowing many, many more to have access to Medicaid right then and there.
Okay. And so this will require that you have to maybe work across the aisles now.
Of course.
How do you get Republicans on board with these ideas? Because I mean, I don't know how the grassroots movement is going for Republicans, and I don't know. I mean, they are beholden to corporations have them like this. So, it's going to be hard to break them out of that. How do you convince them that, hey, this is better for the country? This is better for the nation. We don't need people suffering anymore. And they go, nah, I don't know what to tell you. Sorry. We need competition. So, you have to have competition between the insurance companies to bring the cost down. Da, 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 da. How do you convince them that your position will be better for the country?
Number one, I think that if we talk about, first of all, their constituents, we see that there are so many people in so-called red states that are on Medicaid already. So this would directly appeal to their voters, number one. So to the extent that they are actually doing the work for their constituents, this would be popular to them. And what we also see is that with a government-sponsored insurance plan, the government would have more of an ability because it would be accessible to more people nationwide to negotiate lower prices with companies as it relates to the cost of healthcare and also to the cost of pharmaceuticals. So I think that it's a misequivocation that we can say, oh, there needs to be competition in order for the prices to be lower. Well, no, if we have so many people that are eligible for this plan through the government can negotiate a better rate with these companies directly.
Yeah, no, yeah, what Erica said, that's exactly right. Um, and you know, the cost. Oh, now I'm having a senior moment. Sorry, guys. But what Erica said, I mean, she's spot on.
Senior moments, I have them all
Uh,
the time. Hunter, did you want to add to that? Either Hunter, you can add.
Yeah, real quick, just the kind of tying into the concept of working across the aisle. I think one thing that voters are just so sick and tired of is both parties, Democrats do it just the same, of playing politics just for the sake of playing politics to score political points for your party or whatever it may be. Where we live in a system now where logic is kind of thrown out the door. If you see a Democrat on TV and a reporter asks them something about a Republican, they automatically have to say, "Oh, how horrible!" Blah blah blah. And some people are so scared to like show any give and take with the other side. When we as Americans have to realize that our political system and the political parties are not going to be there to save us, we as the people have to come together and realize that we've been told to hate each other by those in power and those with influence so that we as one people don't actually come together and really change the system. So kind of working across the aisle is vitally important. As new Democrats, as we step into office, we have to realize that we're there to serve the people. We're not there to score points or, make ourselves look good in political sense. If we focus on passing policies that will benefit working class Americans and actually deliver on that, Democrats will win every election. But if they keep focus on being the, anti-MAGA, anti-Republican, just fight, just for political points rather than fighting for policy and purpose, then we're just going to be living in the same exact situations that we've been in. So just a quick point of focusing that we can work across the aisle and we should, and show the American people that we're there to deliver for them, not just win political points for the Democratic Party.
And I agree with you. And in the reading I've done, a lot of it has been, well, the Democrats only focused on Trump bad. That's why you should vote for me.
Mm-hmm.
But these negative stories, I mean, the media loves this, right? They love a sassy comeback from a certain member of Congress. They love putting Hakeem Jeffries on TV when he's scolding Republicans and going after Trump. They love to show Chuck Schumer attacking Republicans. But at the same time, a person who, I can think of snappy comebacks and scolding myself. I don't need to hear that from my elected officials. I know why I sent you to Congress and to the Senate. I want to hear what you're going to do to help us. Please tell me what you're going to do to help us. I don't want to hear any more criticism of Trump. I can't take it. Tell me what you are going to do to help us out of the economic hole we're in. And now we're seeing it with ICE, and I'll just call them the rocks. With the rocks, and let's jump into that. Let's talk about the rocks, because this is something that has been on my mind at least for a while. And one of the things I've noticed is that people don't remember the Bush years and the Obama years and the first Trump administration, where ICE was essentially doing what they're doing now, much worse, because they were also separating families at the border and putting the kids in the cages. And I'm thinking, well, maybe it took some kids who were born after 9/11 to really get us to do something about this, because we, the people, have kind of let this go on for too long. They've been doing warrantless searches. They've been tricking people into opening their doors so they can come in and arrest the moms and take them away from the kids. They've been, detaining and arresting and deporting hundreds of thousands of people every year and denying due process. What is Congress? If anything, what do you think Congress can finally do to rein this in? Is it just, well, we give them $1 less billion, and so that'll leave them with less money to do this job? Or do you create more safeguards? Because again, Congress has the power of the purse, but they also define the parameters of these agencies. Congress created the Department of Homeland Security, right? And they created ICE. So can we create something different? Is something different needed? Do we need a different law enforcement body? What is the solution to what we're seeing before the United States becomes one of those countries where they're just rounding up people and putting them in detention centers? And you know what I'm talking about. Anyone can chime in.
I'll give it a go. So this may be a hot take, and if it is, I'll sit with it. Fine. But to your point, Ayana, Congress created ICE. That means that Congress can eliminate ICE. And what we've seen over the course of this administration, we saw it in past administrations, to your point, the fact that ICE is going around and A, violating the law, and B, kidnapping people, C, putting them into places where their families and their lawyers cannot find them. I don't think that there is a way that Congress can salvage this force, this police force, if you will. And also, I don't know that there would be a need to salvage it. I mean, we already have the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We already have Customs and Border Patrol. To the extent that we are using ICE to enforce immigration policies, we have another agency that can do that. So why do we need both?
Okay, anyone else?
And you know, we've used immigration as a political talking point forever. And there have been so many opportunities where we could have made inroads, where we could put some things to rest, like just for instance, just DACA. We could have put something in place and taken it off and said, give them their pathway to citizen. They are paying into all our systems. They've been here for so long, and then move on. But we've got to continually use it. And it happens on both sides, but we're just seeing it with this administration on steroids. It's almost to the point where we just want nobody who's an immigrant to be able to stay here, or those that have their green card. Our word means nothing. That's the way I look. And as a Army veteran, our word should mean something. And you know, we have like I say, green cards being taken away. We're rounding up people who have really done nothing wrong. They have shown up at whatever we tell them to do, they do. But we're now just saying, nope, we're just going to grab you and then whisk you off. Again, this administration is making it known exactly what they want to do. And you know what's frustrating is to see the type of agents that we have. It is basically his own private police force, you know, because it's bigger than any other, bigger than the police that is in those states. And that is, to me, has me very fearful as to how far are they going to go? That's my biggest thing is I don't see an end in sight, and there is nobody or nothing reeling them back.
And you mentioned DACA. DACA was supposed to be temporary, and it's been what, 25 years or so?
And you know, and they pay every couple of years, they have to pay what, $500, $600, $700 in order to stay, and they do it. They do exactly what they're told.
Mm-hmm. And okay, so where is the pathway to citizenship for people who would like to, who immigrate to the U.S.? I don't care how they got here. Where is the pathway to citizenship? And does that have to be bipartisan to be successful?
I think it touches on the fact that we have to completely overhaul the whole immigration system that we have in place. It is completely outdated. And to our earlier point, we have both parties that don't have the political will to actually really restructure it in a fair, safe, humane way. where we can have safe, secure borders, but also ways for people to become part of our great nation. And people that have been here, like Maura just mentioned, literally people who have been here for decades, who've never committed a crime, are vibrant parts of our communities that are being now living in complete fear, where they're scared to take their children to school, go to church, go to the hospital even. It's just complete insanity. Where you, like was just mentioned, you have this police force where people literally creating such immense fear in our communities, which is completely antithetical to what it means to be an American. We are a country of immigrants, and we need to have an immigration process that is reflective of our values. And you can have both. This idea that, oh, well, if you have fair immigration, then we're just going to have our country will be overrun is just complete nonsense, and goes the fact that we've had an overhaul of trade labor programs that we used to have with Mexico for day labor and things like that, where you can have these economic systems and programs in place that allow all of our countries, both in South and Central America, to thrive off of, where as in the past, since basically Reagan, we've had neoliberal policies that have extracted wealth from South and Central America to U.S. corporations, and has completely devastated a lot of South and Central American countries. And now we're seeing the consequences of that. It's not just climate change migration, but it's also economic immigration. People are literally fleeing for their lives because they cannot live in those countries safely a lot of the times. So we have to realize that that's a reality, and as a federal government, actively work to address those issues so that we can fix the root causes of immigration rather than just trying to band-aid solution it with these inhumane tactics that we're seeing.
And we do have a question in the chat, and then I'll get to you, Alabama Hunter. Just give me 1 second. Someone wants to know what you think of the video put out by certain members of Congress this week. Do we know what video they're talking about?
Yep, I
Okay.
do.
Yeah.
What do you think about that and the response to it? As someone who is you're running for office, and someone is saying that you should be given the ultimate penalty for those kinds of things. What do you think about that?
Well, as
I'm
a
happy to kick
veteran.
us off. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Ericka.
Okay, thank you. And by the way, I meant to mention this to you earlier, Maura. Thank you for your service.
Oh.
So I would like to put out there, not only am I an attorney, but I'm also a caregiver to a disabled combat veteran. My husband and I discuss the UCMJ regularly in our house. And last night I was looking through the UCMJ law, which is actually codified into federal law. And what federal law is relative to obeying orders. There is a requirement that the order be lawful in order for it to be mandatory to comply with it. And so, for members of Congress who have taken the oath, the same or similar oath that I have already taken as an officer of the court, it is an explanation of the law to say that you do not have to follow an unlawful order. That is simply the law. And the response to it by the president, I think it was completely uncalled for and unprecedented. And I think that that should be one of the things that is investigated.
100%. We've already seen people within our military who have said the same thing. They are in uniform and that they've already had their security clearances pulled. And we, as we talked about earlier, when we see some unaliving that's going on, this administration has pulled so many of our JAG officers, has removed so many of them, that we are, and again, going back to Hegseth, he does not believe in the Geneva Convention. He does not believe, he believes that they are impediments to what our service members, if they need to do something, that they stand in their way. He fired so many of those JAG officers because he felt that they would be roadblocks to this administration, to the commander-in-chief, for any type of order that he gave. Well, whenever you do a strike like that, it has to go through the JAG officers, because a deliberate strike has to go through various processes. And there is just no way you can tell me that it has been vetted to say that that is legal. So we learn especially in the military, our young soldiers, when they join and they go to basic training, they are taught in basic training what a lawful and an unlawful order is. But when we take that away, where we're not going to let them know, because just was it yesterday, the Office of Legal Counsel is now involved by saying these are all good to go, and that, you know what, if anything happens on the end, you're going to be protected. That is not what should be being told to them right now, because then that opens up to if we ever are in a war, that opens up to war crimes.
Could not agree more. Yeah, just to kind of, I guess, round that off, the fact that the Commander in Chief, President of the United States, is calling for you know what against elected officials for literally, like Ericka and Maura's just said, stating the law is complete insanity, but not a surprise at all coming from Trump, someone who has complete disregard for our establishments and for what it means to have a rule of law. This is a president who refused to have a peaceful transfer of power, incited an insurrection against our own government, and is now calling for the you-know-whating of elected officials is complete insanity. And to Ericka's point that she mentioned earlier, requires an official investigation by Congress and tangible steps to be taken so that we as Americans can show to future generations and our children that, hey, this cannot stand. We as a country have laws that make us so that we can live in such the country that we live in, and we have a responsibility as citizens to uphold that standard and uphold those things, especially when it comes to such a degree that it's come to. So yeah, could not agree more.
Okay, and this question is specifically for Alabama Hunter, but you others can chime in if you'd like. Alabama Hunter, are you there? All right. You're in Alabama, obviously. One of the things I have discovered recently about a certain corporation and other corporations is that in states like Alabama, they are allowed to violate the law, but because they bring billions of dollars of business to that state, they pay a fine, they go on about their business. They violate the environmental laws, the labor laws, the child labor laws, the immigration laws, and they're still allowed to do business in the state. What parameters do you think states need to put on these corporations to, okay, encourage them to do business, because that's great, they're bringing thousands of jobs to the state, but also you need to work within the bounds of the law. And if you were caught, employing children at 6 o'clock in the morning who are cleaning your factories, or you're caught putting too much emissions into the air, we're not going to relax the regulations for you. We're going to hold you in some kind of contempt, or more than just a fine. We're going to perhaps put a cap on the amount of business you can do. What do you think the state can do to regulate these rule breakers?
What I would like to see done is a fine, but a fine that has real damage. So what I would say is, hey, you do provide some type of economic development to this area, so I'm not going to try to stop you there, but here's what we're going to do. Every single fine you get from now on, after the first fine, will be a percentage of your profit. So whatever you put down on your taxes, we're taking a percentage of that. So if you make $20 billion, the first fine will be the regular fine. We understand maybe you didn't have a certain thing. We do have to show that we have some type of control over the situation, but we'll give you leeway. Second fine, you make $20 billion. We are taking 10% of that $20 billion at roughly $200 million. And we are then investing that into an investigatory system to watch you, to make sure we help you not to make these violations again. Most companies, once you start saying we're taking a portion of your profits at a percentage, they will not have that issue again. And they also won't have a choice of having that issue again, because they violate that statute one time, and that's enough to pay for an investigative program for the rest of the decade.
So we have a comment in the audience from Aaron Petrie, who's also running for office, and they said, fines won't work because lobbying is too strong. You must treat the root cause. What is the root cause, you think, of why they think it's okay to come to the United States and just
Money.
Capitalism as a whole, you would have to get rid of capitalism.
oh,
Well,
wow.
to be fair, I think there can be regulations in place that would prevent the level of greed and corruption that we have. So, for example, we used to have prior to Citizens United and back in even the 1800s, some of the most strict campaign finance laws, and we had the least corrupt forms of government during those times. But since then, you've seen a complete erosion of that, where you have now where literally companies can spend unlimited amounts of money with no oversight, no visual into it. They can have shell companies that hide where the money's actually coming from, that fund our politicians, and then shocker, those politicians go and vote for policies that those big companies want and benefit from. So I think if you can get us back to that system with common sense, logical laws that say that candidates running for office have to be reflective of the interests of the people, not just their big donors. And you do that in a much more technical way than that simple way of putting it. But that has to be the end goal, which I think is completely doable. So I do think that can be remade a reality.
And people always say get rid of Citizens United, but they never say what they're going to replace it with. You have to replace it with something. If you take away Citizens United, then people are going to feel like their money doesn't matter to elections and they're just not going to contribute. So what do you replace it with? Do you put a cap on how much a PAC can donate? Do you put a cap on the amount of fundraising? Do you put a cap on this? What are you replacing it with to make sure that something like that does not come to the forefront again?
We're actually, and I'll be super quick with this, we're part of a coalition that's pushing for and actually a constitutional amendment that would clarify that money is not speech. Because what the court ultimately ruled with Citizens United was that in that umbrella of free speech under the First Amendment, that money, and as an individual, for example, I should have the right to spend unlimited amounts of money as my speech. So and what that's ultimately the role of the courts and the Supreme Court, is to play a check on what the interpretations of the Constitution are. So what that means is, if that's how the court's going to rule, which I completely disagree with, then Congress has to come in and step in, and make that constitutional amendment to clarify that speech is not money, and that speech is speech, and that one vote is one vote. A constitutional amendment in that process obviously is a giant process and a giant undertaking, but I do think we're at a pivotal turning point in our nation's history where people are so fed up and realizing now that we as Americans are being completely taken for a ride when it comes to the things that we deserve and need as people. So if we can fix that, then we can have a completely different system.
I also would like to know, for those who are running in Congress, how many of y'all are for removing the filibuster? Okay, because I asked that specifically
Maura was
because
silent and Ericka
we've
was silent. Ericka, do you know? Are you
My
for?
screen froze. I didn't catch the entire question.
Oh,
What'd you say, Hunter?
he wanted to know if you were for removing the filibuster.
I'd certainly consider it. I think that the filibuster has been used by the party not in power to kind of dictate how we move forward in Congress, and so I would certainly consider it. Um, I don't have much more to add to that than that.
the reason why I brought that up was we can go down the list of pieces of legislation that would have not passed if, after the civil rights era, they started trying to actually pass those bills. Like, for example, the bill to uh, create the Department of Education probably would not have passed. Social Security probably would not have passed. Medicaid probably would not have passed. Medicare probably would have. It's very dependent on that. But even with both Medicaid and Medicare, both of those were only passed with like 55 votes, not the 60 you need. So I personally don't. I think we're kind of stuck in a rut where because we are unable to pass most legislative bills at the congressional level, we have to rely on the president and the Supreme Court to backfill whatever problem there is. And because there is a defunct 1/3 of the entire section of the federal government, President can do whatever they want as long as Supreme Court backs them up on it.
And
It's
even
the
if the
same.
Supreme Court disagrees, the president, we've seen that now with the Trump administration just completely disregarding, the SCOTUS ruling. So yeah, no, it's a super good point though. I totally agree.
A president who's not being reined in by the checker. What do you think when you get to Congress? How do you see yourself as restoring that role as a check on the presidency? That's an important role. I mean, that's in the Constitution. That's not something you get to abdicate. How do you see yourself as restoring that, Maura?
You hold them accountable and you take back your power. They have just let him do anything, because now it's easier for them to say, well, I had nothing to do with it. It was him that did it. So don't hold that against me when it's time for the midterms. So, like, almost every single one of them has just abdicated their responsibility for what we're paying them for.
And how much power do you think the midterms hold over a president? Do you think it's a big deal, or do you think it's a referendum on the presidency, Ericka?
We've seen in years past that the party in power in the presidency has a tendency to flip for Congress in the midterms. And I don't see 2026 as being any different from that, because we've all seen, heard, and felt the effects of this administration far and wide, all across this nation. And I think that people have finally started to wake up to see that what's happening is morally wrong. It is unethical. It is illegal. And if we continue to vote for people who would prop up these actions that are taking place by this presidency and by this administration, these things would continue to happen over and over again. So I certainly see 2026 as being a referendum on the president and his administration.
I totally agree with that. And just to quickly add to that, I think we as Democrats have to realize that yes, we need to be fighting against the Trump administration because they are actively doing things that are hurting working class Americans and not just people in America but across the globe. And we can get into that, which I hope we are. But simultaneously, as Democrats, we have to be pushing for policies that will create real, tangible change. We have, especially if we're able to take control of the House, which I completely think is doable, and we will. We have to be pushing for policies that will really create actual change in people's lives. I think, too, in an interesting way, and people can, feel free to disagree with me on this. I think with Trump as a sitting duck president, that we do have a chance to actually, in some cases, get things done. I think he's so egotistical and narcissistic that it can be treated in a way that if he's seen as someone that's benefiting the working class by signing Democrat bills that we bring forward to him, I do think that can actually happen. While simultaneously we're investigating impeachment options and things like that. So I just want to quickly add that while we're fighting against Trump, we also need to be pushing for policies that'll help people.
So let's talk about that, because people have criticized the Democrat Party for moving away from working class people, and well, that's why you lost in 2024, because you're for the elites and you're not working class. You're not the working class party anymore. But the Republican Party is also for the elites, even more so, I think, than the Democrat Party. And so how could they also be seen as being for the working class? How do we redefine the party as being for working class people? What policies or what ideas can you advance that would bring that attitude back to people about the Democrat Party? That this is for the working class. This is for people who are out there. You're in a union, you're working 40 hours, you're working 2 jobs. You got to put your kids in daycare. You got to work long hours. You're sitting in traffic, et cetera, et cetera. How do you get people back to seeing that this party and its policies are for working class Americans? Anyone can chime in.
I
Well,
think it
when I ran,
starts. Go ahead.
sorry.
Go
Well,
ahead,
when I
Maura.
when I ran
Yeah.
the first time, those were the issues that I was running on, because that's what the rural areas especially was telling me. And so when they were coming up and saying, that we weren't for the working class, that we were the elitist, how do we get back to that? It's like, man, I was already there. But it just wasn't resonating. When we talk about policies, as Hunter had mentioned, we need to, when we create legislation, we need to make sure that we actually get buy-in from the people. Too many times we create legislation, we bring it to the floor, and then it goes to the boneyard to die. But we have to take that extra step to make sure we get co-sponsors. And the more we have, you have a better chance of getting that passed.
Yeah, I totally agree. And to the point of kind of what specific policies we can be pushing for. So, for example, antitrust laws have been completely, basically thrown out the window in a lot of instances. We have a huge monopolization problem in our economy where massive multinational corporations have monopolized basically every major industry. You have 2 to 3, sometimes 4 massive corporations that own 90, 80% sometimes of these industries, which has led to in large part, led to the current situation we're in, where they can unilaterally jack up prices, charge people exorbitant amounts for different things, whether it be your groceries, whether it be getting gasoline, all of these different things that we pay for. So for one, have to be enforcing antitrust laws. To the extent of which companies specifically we would be breaking up, that would require, congressional investigation and looking into the specifics of that. But if we as a Democratic Party are willing to say, hey, we want to fight these companies so that the American people can benefit rather than just take their money and stay silent, that's a huge thing. We have to be looking at taxation breakdowns, what our money is actually going to, subsidizing fossil fuel industry. So tons of, the list goes on, but I think that is kind of one of the main things that we have to be pushing for. And to that point, as Democrats, that's one of the biggest things that differentiates progressive Democrats from the corporatists, because the corporatists are so beholden on that corporate money that they're not willing to say that, hey, we need to break up these companies. We need to actually enforce our antitrust laws. They get votes because they're pro-environment, because they're pro LGBTQIA plus, because there's all these social issues that are great things that make Democrats Democrats. But then they're able to slide into office because of that big money, and they run on those platforms. But then you have other candidates, people like Zoran Mamdani, who are saying that those corporations need to be tackled and addressed directly. And those are the type of Democrats we have to be getting in office.
And just to add to that, I think that a lot of being a party for the working class, it starts with learning what issues are important to the working class and how best to learn what issues are important, but to have town halls. I know that in my district, we have a GOP representative who's had this seat for nearly 20 years. And the last time that he did an open community town hall in the district was pre-COVID. So it's been that long of a period of time. We need to be in our communities, talking with people, seeing what's important to them, and then learning from them about what legislation we can craft that's going to bring about real change that impacts the real working people that we have in our districts.
And if I can just throw in what you just said, when I would ask the people of the district about what their issues were, and they would tell me, I would always then ask them, if you were in charge, what would you do different? Or what would you put in place? And I would write down what some of those answers were. And then I would go and research, because I'd say, you know what? That made sense. Why is that not in place? And it's only two reasons. It was either taking money out of somebody's pocket, or it wasn't putting money in. And that was the only reason they weren't in place. But I think if we listen to the constituents, they have some brilliant ideas. And that's what our job is. It's supposed to be their voice and to figure out how we can make things happen. We got to stop having, Congress dictate to us what we want. We need to be dictating to Congress what we want, and this is how we expect to get it.
Have come out and said that you don't take corporate PAC money, and a certain PAC, the AI PAC, you're not dealing with them. How do you maintain that when if you get, and I'm hoping that you do, you win your seat and you get to the state house, you get to the big Capitol building. How do you maintain that? There are candidates who they run for office, they're grassroots, small dollar donors, they got the people pounding the pavement and they're on the phones for them and they're knocking doors, and then they get to their seat and they're like, well, thanks, I'm going to go over here and take this $60 million check from Uline and this $50 million from I don't know, GE, and this 20 million from Disney, and I'm going to forget all about the people who got me here. Each one of you, I would like to hear from you how you plan to maintain your grassroots beginnings and continue to support the people who got you to where you are. Ericka, you can go first.
Sure. My commitment not to take PAC funds does not end if and when I'm elected. That is something that I will continue because that's who I am, and that's me being true to myself. That's me being true to the people of this district that I hope will decide that I am the best candidate to represent them. So, that being said, we're going to have a team of people that are going to be calling, making calls, sending emails to try to continue to get those small dollar donations. And because we will not be funded by these corporate interests or PACs, we will have the ability to do the things like bringing down Citizens United, like doing whatever it may be, whether I be crafting a piece of legislation or signing on to somebody else's legislation to bring forward universal health care. We will have these demonstrable actions that we've taken in Congress to show the people, hey, we're working for you and this is what we're doing. We don't take PAC money. Please support us financially.
Mm-hmm.
And Alabama Hunter?
I will note a caveat that I do take some forms of PAC money. Labor unions are a form of PAC money, but not specifically like Alabama corporate PAC money. I don't think that is appropriate, or payday loan PAC money is another one that I don't think is appropriate because they're exploitative in nature. What I will also say is hopefully by this time next year, I will have helped revitalize my county Democratic Party, and I'm going to push for bylaw changes that will exclude anyone from running on the Democratic ticket inside the county, and hopefully at the state level as well, that takes specifically at the very least Alabama Power and other corporation money. That way we can actually cut back on some of the influence of those people. They literally will not be able to run for office if they take that money the cycle before, myself included.
When you look at where all the PAC money is, it has nothing to do with your district, right? And then when I look again, my guy, all that money that he's focusing his time on for them is not for the people of the district. And there's no way that I can forget who I am and what I'm supposed to do, and that is to represent the people of my district. And listening to them, that's all I'm supposed to report to. I don't need to report to anybody else. Last year when I was walking the halls of Congress, and I'm seeing all these people, and I'm like, man, this place is hopping. And I'm like, who are they? And they are the lobbyists and the PACs doing their rounds, visiting their Congress folks. So that tells you where the power is. And so we got to make sure the people know they are the power. So we just have to be vigilant as to where the money is and make sure that we either return it and just make sure we keep it from the people.
And Hunter Miranda.
Yeah, those were such good answers. So completely agree. I think to Ericka's point that once we take office, we continue that pledge of saying that, we will continue not to take those funds, and then let the work prove itself. I think a lot of politicians realize that if they're down there fighting every single day for working class Americans, making our lives better and improving us through actually passing legislation rather than just hosting an event or going to a fundraiser or talking, getting a soundbite in a hearing, that doesn't actually help people. If you're steadfast and focused on that goal and can actually deliver for people, the votes will come to you. You don't have to rely on this outside money to make sure that you get $1 million commercial, that you can spread around. If you're actually delivering for the people, I think that the people in nowadays, especially, that your people are able to get information so accessibly. We can pull it out on our phones. We don't necessarily have the barrier. Obviously, there are huge barriers still in place, but it's definitely less now. If we can prove to the people that we're actually delivering for them, we won't need to be reliant on that. And that's definitely a politics and a future that I think that we as grassroots candidates can really help usher in. So definitely exciting stuff.
Okay, in these last few minutes, I can't believe we've been sitting here since 3 o'clock. This has been so exciting. This robust conversation. I really love it. I love talking about politics. I could talk for hours and hours and hours. In these last few minutes, I want each of you to just deliver a closing statement about who you are and summarize your campaign and your platform and what you want the people to remember about you. And I'll start with Maura.
Well, my website is maurakeller.com, so that's easy to remember. I'm a retired Army Lieutenant Colonel. I did 26 years in the Army. I did 12 years as an independent contractor working for the Undersecretary of Defense. And then I worked as a nuclear medicine technologist, and with lastly being at the VA. So the VA was the reason that I decided to run. Was as a leader, I know how to fix things. And when I couldn't get people to fix things or to care enough to fix things, that was the catalyst to make me decide to run. I think this district has been forgotten. The people have been forgotten. I've been a public servant since I was 17 years old. And I feel like I've served my country. I took care of my soldiers. I took care of my patients. And so now it's time to take care of my district. And it's about listening to the people. Life's hard, life's short, and we don't need to make it any harder. We just need to care about each other. We need to be the people that it's like, hey, you can sleep at night because we're at the helm. You don't have to worry about your children. You don't have to worry about your health. You don't have to worry about school because we're listening to you, and we're going to make sure everything's okay. And I don't think you can get any simpler than that.
If you're not already, please follow these candidates. And when they mention their website, go to their website and you can donate to their campaigns through their websites. But you can also donate if you know about Act Blue. You can go directly to Act Blue, look up the candidates and give a donation there. But please do go to their websites, visit their social media, see what they're about and whether you want them to have your support. I mean, maybe you don't, but I think you should. I think that they should receive your support, whether you are in their state or not. These are some great candidates, and I'll send it over to Ericka.
Thank you so much for having me at this event. It's been fabulous. I am, like I said, a healthcare attorney. I am a caregiver to a disabled combat veteran, and we've been fortunate to have the support of the VA. But, even with all of its red tape, we know that not everyone in this country that needs access to care can get care through the VA. And honestly, we deserve better. Like Maura said, our district, the people in Virginia's first district, we have been forgotten by a congressman who's been in this seat for nearly 20 years. And we deserve better. And I want to bring better for our community. I stand for access, action, and accountability. And I will use all of those in conjunction with each other to work on legislation to pass universal Medicaid, and to bring accountability to federal actors that we need accountability from. First and foremost, on day one, the President of the United States. And so I hope that you all will visit my website to learn more about me. You can find me at erickakopp.com.
Alabama Hunter, your turn.
This is Robert Lewis Hunter. I'm running for House District 28 in Gadsden, Alabama. I am a community organizer. That's the main reason why I took on this work was my community needed someone to step up to represent them. It's not the first time I've done that in either volunteering for my library, helping run a nonprofit that averaged about $500,000 in the budget, or leading my community in other activities such as the free store I ran for 3 years, and me being the local pride organizer for my community as an ally for the last 4 years. I sincerely believe that things are possible if we get enough people to stand behind us on these issues. My website is www.voteforroberthunter.com. The 4 is an actual number 4. My Act Blue is also Robert Hunter. It should pop up under that. I'm needing 300 people to give $5 to $25 a month. That should pay for the entirety of my campaign, which I'm running against the most conservative individual in my entire state, who's a millionaire, who's also going to spend probably $500,000. He also is the largest land and renter in the county as well.
Sorry, I think my headphones just died. Perfect timing. Great. So thank you so much for hosting, and the work that y'all do is so important for our democracy, and also the other candidates here, so important. I have so much respect and appreciation for what you're doing, so thank you all. So important that we as everyday people are actually stepping up and wanting to really take back our country. I genuinely think we're at a pivotal turning point in the nation's history where people are so fed up with the system and realizing that the system has been so rigged and so bought out that we as everyday Americans are actually stepping up and really seizing the power for ourselves. So it's such an exciting moment to be a part of. Obviously, there's lots of scary things that we have to be fighting against, but there's so much hope and so much optimism and things that we can do as people. So I want everyone to just always remember that you as an individual citizen can drastically change the course of not just our country, but the entire world. So I want people to always remember that. Also, I see that there's a few other candidates in the chat as well. I would highly encourage, if anyone has any questions or wants to chat about it, to reach out to us. You can do that through our website. It's huntermiranda2026.com. Obviously, running for office has a lot of learning curves and experiences, and I'm sure all the other candidates can attest to that. So having that community is super important. We do actually, and to the other candidates, I know a few of you might be already involved, but there's a few other coalitions and groups of candidates. So if you want to connect, reach out to us and we can work about getting you hooked up. But yeah, honestly, thank you so much. You can check us out at huntermiranda2026.com, and so exciting to be part of this moment. So thank you, everyone.
And thank you all for joining us this afternoon. It has been wonderful. We appreciate you sharing your platform and ideas with us and letting the people know where you stand and where you will continue to stand for the people. And we want to remind you that this will be our last event until after Thanksgiving. We will return on December 2nd. That's Tuesday, December 2nd, 2025, with a double header featuring Britta Aguirre, I think it is, and Joanna Wally. Again, we'll return in December on December 2nd, Tuesday, December 2nd, with more live town halls, more grassroots candidates, more exciting ideas for the future of our nation. We are Our Vote Counts. From all of us here in the audience, thank you so much for joining us. For Ericka, Kopp, Maura, Keller, Hunter Miranda, and Robert Hunter, my name is Ayanna Fakir, and I am a moderator here with Our Vote Counts, which is a nonpartisan movement uniting Americans from all walks of life to empower voters, support candidates of integrity like we've shown today, and ensure every voice is heard. Through education, outreach, accountability, and action, we are building a stronger democracy, one informed vote at a time. We thank you for joining us. Remember, your vote is your power, and you better use it. Everyone, have a good afternoon and have a good evening, and enjoy your holiday, your time with your families, and we'll see you in December. Thanks again.